January 29th, 1945. Snow-covered Belgium. A quiet farmhouse. First Sergeant Leonard Funk turns a corner and walks straight into death. 90 German soldiers are standing in front of him. Not charging, not firing, just staring. Half of them are already armed. The other half are grabbing rifles from the ground. Behind them, 4 American soldiers kneel helplessly in the snow, hands locked behind their heads. 20 minutes ago, these Germans were prisoners. Now they're free, organized, and seconds away from slaughtering Funk's company from behind. A German officer steps forward, slams an MP-40 submachine gun into Funk's stomach, screams an order in German. Funk doesn't understand a word. The officer screams again, louder, red-faced, furious. Funk looks at the gun, looks at the 90 Germans, looks at his captured men, and then he starts laughing. Not nervous laughter, not fake laughter, real, uncontrollable laughter. The Germans freeze. The officer hesitates. Something feels wrong, because men who are about to die don't laugh. What happens next lasts less than 60 seconds. When it's over, 21 Germans will be dead, dozens more will be wounded, the rest will surrender in shock, and Leonard Funk will walk away alive, earning the Medal of Honor for one of the most unbelievable moments of World War II, all because he laughed. Leonard Alfred Funk Jr. was not born a hero. He wasn't raised on glory, speeches, or dreams of medals. He was born on August 27, 1916, in Braddock Township, Pennsylvania, a steel town that smelled of smoke, sweat, and hard labor. The Monongahela River ran past factories that never slept, and neither did the men who worked beside it. Leonard grew up fast. Life didn't give him time to be soft. By the time he was a teenager, he was already taking care of his younger brother. Responsibility came early, and excuses were never an option. When he graduated high school in 1934, America was still drowning in the Great Depression. Jobs were rare. College was a fantasy. Survival was the goal. Leonard found work where he could, clerical jobs, quiet work, nothing heroic. On paper, he was ordinary, short, lean, soft-spoken. No one would have picked him out of a crowd and said, "That man will one day stare down 90 enemies." Then the world caught fire. By 1941, war was tearing through Europe and Asia. America tried to stay distant, but distance didn't last. Congress expanded the draft. Leonard's number came up. In June 1941, at 24 years old, he reported for induction at Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. The Army doctor looked him over. 5'5", 140 pounds, the kind of body built for paperwork, not combat. But Leonard Funk didn't want a desk. He didn't want safety. He volunteered for the paratroopers. At the time, airborne troops were something new and terrifying. Jumping out of perfectly good airplanes into enemy territory sounded insane to most soldiers. Airborne training was designed to break men. Endless running, brutal physical punishment, jump towers that taught you how to fall without dying, aircraft jumps where every instinct screamed, "Don't let go." Half the men washed out. Leonard Funk didn't. He earned his jump wings and was assigned to Company C, 1st Battalion, 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment. By late 1943, he shipped to England and joined the legendary 82nd Airborne Division, men who had already fought and bled in Sicily and Italy. Leonard was older than most of them, 27 in a unit full of barely grown boys. But age brought something else, steadiness. When chaos hit, Leonard didn't panic. When others hesitated, he moved. Men noticed. They followed him without being asked. By June 6, 1944, D-Day, Leonard Funk was a squad leader. At 1:30 a.m., inside a rattling C-47 aircraft, he stood in the jump line with 60 pounds of gear dragging at his body. Below him was occupied France, enemy territory in every direction. German flak exploded around the plane, metal fragments slamming into the fuselage. The aircraft flew too low, too dangerous. Then the green light came on. Leonard jumped. The blast from the propellers hit him like a wall. Then silence. The parachute opened, and France rose up beneath him in darkness and fire. Men landed everywhere, flooded fields, trees, enemy positions. Some drowned, some were shot before they could even unclip. Leonard hit the ground hard. His ankle twisted violently. Pain tore through his leg. It might have been broken, but he stood up anyway, because quitting wasn't an option. Alone, injured, 40 miles from his drop zone, Leonard Funk started walking into the dark. The pain in Leonard Funk's ankle didn't fade. If anything, it got worse with every step. The hedgerows of Normandy were nothing like the maps. Thick, high walls of earth and roots cut the land into narrow corridors. Visibility was bad. Sound carried in strange ways. A twig snapping could be a German patrol or another lost American. Leonard moved carefully, rifle ready, breath controlled. He avoided roads. Roads meant checkpoints. Roads meant machine guns. Before dawn, he heard whispers, American voices. Leonard raised his hand, fingers tight on the trigger. A challenge came quietly from the shadows. Password exchanged. Relief hit hard. He wasn't alone anymore. By sunrise, Leonard had gathered a small group, paratroopers from different units, some wounded, some shaken, all scattered by the jump. No officers, no clear orders, just confusion. That's when something changed. Without asking permission, Leonard took charge. He studied faces, counted weapons, noted injuries. He didn't shout, he didn't give speeches. He simply pointed, assigned positions, and started moving. And the men followed. They moved through farms turned into battlegrounds. Dead livestock, burned houses, civilians hiding in cellars, eyes wide with terror. Every corner felt like a trap. German patrols were close, too close. Gunfire cracked suddenly. A short, violent burst. A German scouting group crossed their path. Leonard reacted instantly. He split his men, flanked the patrol, and opened fire. The fight was quick and brutal. When it ended, German bodies lay in the grass. The Americans didn't celebrate. They searched pockets, took maps, ammunition. One soldier vomited. Leonard didn't judge, he just kept moving. As the day wore on, more paratroopers joined them. Lone survivors, small clusters, men who had been wandering for hours. By afternoon, Leonard was leading nearly 20 men. Still no orders, still no contact, but the mission hadn't changed. Disrupt the enemy, hold ground, cause confusion. Near a crossroads surrounded by hedgerows, Leonard stopped. German movement had increased. Vehicles, troops, something important was nearby. Leonard climbed a small rise and looked through his binoculars. What he saw made his stomach tighten. A German formation was gathering, dozens of infantrymen, well-armed, moving with purpose. They weren't retreating, they were organizing. This wasn't a patrol, this was a force. Leonard Funk was wounded, outnumbered, cut off, and standing directly in their path. The easy choice was to pull back. Leonard didn't. He lowered the binoculars, turned to his men, and spoke calmly. "We hold here." No one argued. They dug in along the hedgerows, setting firing positions, checking weapons, waiting. The air felt heavy. Time stretched. Every second dragged. Then the Germans advanced, and Leonard realized something terrifying. They weren't facing 20 enemies. They were facing nearly 90.
Leonard Funk had seconds to decide. The German formation moved with discipline, rifles ready, helmets low, officers walking confidently at the center. They had numbers, training, momentum. Leonard had hedgerows and men who trusted him. He placed his soldiers carefully, not in a line, not in a cluster. He spread them out, thin but wide, making the Germans believe they were facing a much larger force. Machine guns were positioned to echo. Riflemen staggered their fire lanes. Then Leonard did something no one expected. He stood up. Not fully, just enough to be seen. He stepped out from the hedgerow, rifle slung, pistol visible, hands relaxed at his sides. The German advance slowed. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Leonard shouted, in German, clear, confident, commanding. He ordered them to halt, claimed they were surrounded, claimed American armor was minutes away, claimed resistance would mean slaughter. The Germans hesitated. Leonard kept walking forward. Every step sent pain screaming through his ankle, but he didn't show it. He walked like a man who knew he was in control, like a man backed by an army. Behind him, his men waited, fingers white on triggers, hearts hammering. The German officer stepped forward, demanding proof. Leonard didn't argue. He raised his pistol and fired a single shot into the air. At that exact moment, his men opened fire, not wildly, but in controlled bursts from multiple directions. The sound bounced through the hedgerows, magnified, chaotic. The Germans dropped instinctively. Smoke drifted, leaves fell. The illusion worked. Leonard shouted again, louder now. "Lay down your weapons!" Seconds stretched. Then something unbelievable happened. A rifle hit the ground, then another. Helmets came off, hands went up. One by one, nearly 90 German soldiers surrendered. Leonard Funk stood there, wounded, exhausted, barely holding himself upright as enemy soldiers walked toward him, disarmed, defeated. His men stared in disbelief. This wasn't courage, this was audacity bordering on madness. Leonard ordered the prisoners secured, weapons collected, documents seized. He moved fast, knowing the truth wouldn't hold forever. German reinforcements would come. They always did. But for now, a single American paratrooper had just captured an entire enemy force. When U.S. command finally made contact later that day, the report sounded impossible. Officers questioned it, intelligence double-checked it. But the prisoners were real, the weapons were real, the maps were real, and Leonard Funk's limp was very real. He didn't brag, he didn't smile, he simply asked for new orders, because the war wasn't over, and Normandy was still burning.
By late afternoon, the hedgerows of Normandy were quieter, but not safe. Leonard Funk sat on an ammo crate, boot off, ankles swollen to twice its size. A medic wrapped it tight while officers argued nearby. Radios crackled. Maps were spread on the hood of a jeep. 90 prisoners, still standing in rows. That was the problem. Battalion command didn't question bravery, they questioned numbers. "How many did you say?" "Again, you're certain?" Leonard didn't interrupt. He just listened, jaw clenched, dirt still caked on his face. His men stood behind him, tired but alert. Every one of them backed the story. Every detail matched. Finally, a senior officer stepped closer. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that a wounded paratrooper with a handful of men forced an enemy company to surrender without support?" Leonard looked up. "Yes, sir." Silence followed. Then the officer exhaled and shook his head. Jesus Christ. The Germans were marched away under guard. Their weapons were catalogued. Their maps revealed supply routes, artillery positions, fallback lines, information that would save lives within hours. That's when command realized the real value of what had happened. Leonard Funk hadn't just captured soldiers, he had broken momentum. Enemy units nearby pulled back, unsure how many Americans were in the area. Attacks were delayed. Confusion spread. The illusion Leonard created continued to work even after he was gone. By nightfall, Leonard was ordered to the rear. He protested, "I can still fight." The medic cut him off. "You'll fight again, not today." As he was loaded onto a transport, soldiers passed him quietly. Some nodded, some stared. One simply said, "Hell of a thing you did back there." Leonard didn't reply. He stared out at the darkening fields of Normandy, where flares still burned and distant gunfire echoed like thunder trapped underground. He thought of the men who didn't make it, the jumps that went wrong, the friends lost before they ever hit the ground. What he'd done wasn't heroics to him, it was survival. Days later, paperwork began to move. Reports climbed desks, witness statements stacked up. A recommendation was typed, revised, typed again. Medal of Honor. The words felt heavy, almost unreal. Leonard never asked for it, never expected it. When he finally stood in dress uniform months later, medals pinned to his chest, cameras flashing, he felt more uncomfortable than proud. He wasn't thinking about the surrender. He was thinking about the war still raging. Because heroes weren't done fighting, and Normandy was only the beginning.
Leonard Funk didn't get a victory parade. He got orders. Within days of being treated, wrapped, and officially pulled off the line, the war pulled him right back. Normandy wasn't done chewing men up, and America didn't have the luxury of resting its best fighters. Leonard rejoined his unit with a limp that never fully went away. No speeches, no applause, just rifles being cleaned and eyes that had seen too much. The men looked at him differently now, not with jealousy, with trust, the kind that says, if hell opens up again, this guy will stand in front of it. Operations continued non-stop, village by village, hedgerow by hedgerow, house to house. The Germans were retreating, but retreating soldiers are often more dangerous than advancing ones. Traps were everywhere. Snipers hid in church towers. Mines waited under doorsteps. Every shadow could kill. Leonard learned to read silence. Too quiet meant danger. One morning, his patrol moved through a shattered farming village. Stone walls blown apart, carts overturned, a piano lying on its side in the street like a broken ribcage of culture. That's when the shot rang out. A single crack. A man dropped. Everyone hit the ground. Leonard crawled forward despite the pain in his leg. He spotted the muzzle flash, second floor, corner window. He signaled 2 men around the flank while laying down suppressive fire. The sniper never got a second shot. Moments like this happened daily. No medals, no paperwork, just quick decisions that meant someone lived another hour. At night, the men whispered about home, about women, about what they'd do if they survived. Leonard listened more than he spoke. Leadership wasn't yelling, it was being calm when everyone else was cracking. Then came the news. The recommendation had been approved. The Medal of Honor wasn't a rumor anymore. It was official. The men congratulated him in awkward ways. Backslaps, cigarettes offered, jokes that covered discomfort. Leonard accepted it quietly, because inside, he felt something heavy. How do you wear a medal for bravery when the men who made it possible are buried in French soil? The war didn't care about honors. 2 weeks later, another attack, another push, another night where artillery shook the earth like an angry god. Leonard Funk moved forward again, limping, focused, alive, knowing one truth better than anyone. Heroes don't leave the war when the war is done with them. They leave when the war finally lets go. By late 1944, something had changed. Not in the maps, not in the orders, in the men. They were thinner now, quieter. Jokes came slower, if at all. Everyone knew the war was turning in the Allies' favor, but that didn't make it safer. In many ways, it made it worse. The Germans were desperate, and desperate enemies fight dirty. Leonard Funk felt it in the air, the way officers spoke in shorter sentences, the way patrols lasted longer, the way nights felt heavier, like the dark itself was listening. Then came the Ardennes. Snow, forests, cold that cut deeper than shrapnel. The Germans launched a surprise counteroffensive, later called the Battle of the Bulge, and suddenly the war exploded back to life with savage force. Units were overrun, lines collapsed, Confusion ruled. Leonard's unit was rushed into the chaos. The forest was a maze of trees, smoke, and fear. White snow stained black with oil and blood. Visibility dropped to nothing. You could hear tanks before you saw them, deep mechanical growls moving through the woods. One night, German artillery began pounding their position, shell after shell. Trees snapped, men screamed, earth flew like rain. Leonard crawled from foxhole to foxhole, checking on his men, shouting through the thunder. He dragged one wounded soldier into cover, while explosions lit the snow like lightning. At one point, a shell landed so close it buried him alive. For seconds, there was nothing, no sound, no light, just pressure. Hands dug him out. He coughed, spat blood, and stood up again, still standing, still leading. Supplies ran low, ammunition was rationed, food froze solid. Men slept sitting up because lying down meant freezing to death. But they held. Day after day. German attacks came in waves, infantry supported by tanks, pushing hard, trying to break through before reinforcements arrived. Leonard coordinated defensive fire, repositioned men, and kept the line from folding. Leadership here wasn't heroic speeches, it was survival math. Who shoots, who moves, who lives. Eventually, Allied air power returned. The skies cleared. The German push stalled. The bulge began to shrink. When the order finally came to advance, Leonard looked around at what remained of his unit, faces hollow, eyes older than their bodies. They moved forward anyway, because that's what soldiers did. And Leonard Funk, already marked by war, stepped deeper into it, not knowing that the end was closer than it felt, and that the price had already been paid.
The village of Holzheim lay quiet, too quiet. Snow crunched under Leonard Funk's boots, but every sound in the village felt amplified. Broken windows, toppled barrels, the faint groan of wounded men hidden behind doors. His company had captured the village hours ago, yet Funk sensed the enemy had not surrendered entirely. Every shadow could hide a soldier. Every corner could hold death. And then he saw it. A farmhouse. 4 of his men were guarding 80 prisoners, disarmed Germans he thought were contained. Funk's instinct screamed danger. Something about the way the prisoners moved, the subtle shift in formation, told him this wasn't over. A German officer suddenly stepped forward, thrusting his MP-40 into Funk's stomach. He screamed commands in German. Funk didn't understand a word. His 4 men were helpless. 90 armed Germans stood before him. The math was impossible. 1 man against 90. And yet Leonard Funk laughed. A laugh that began small, almost nervous, then grew louder, shaking his shoulders, spilling into the cold air like a weapon. The Germans froze, confused. The officer's face turned red, his anger almost cartoonish. Funk laughed harder. Every heartbeat stretched, every second counted. And then, lightning fast, Funk moved. His Thompson submachine gun came up, muzzle steady. He fired. 30 rounds in seconds. The officer fell. Chaos erupted. The 4 guards scrambled for weapons. The Germans stumbled in confusion. And in under 60 seconds, Funk turned a massacre into victory. 21 Germans dead. 40+ surrendered. Leonard Funk, the 5-foot 5-inch paratrooper who had once been a store clerk, had done the impossible. He didn't shout. He didn't gloat. He just stood, rifle smoking, snow soaking his boots, breathing heavy, surrounded by chaos and bodies. This was Leonard Funk, fearless, calm, and utterly unpredictable. The kind of man the war favored when the odds were impossible and logic said surrender. And behind him, the village waited, silent, safe, for now.
The snow-covered streets of Holzheim were eerily silent now, but Funk knew better. Every corner, every broken doorway could hide the enemy. His men, exhausted yet alert, moved like shadows behind him. The village was small, 15 houses, but each one held danger. Funk's mind was razor sharp, every step, every breath calculated. The 4 guards who had once been prisoners were now fighters, rifles trembling but ready. Funk didn't just command, he inspired. One glance, one shouted order, and men who had never fired a shot became soldiers in the harshest classroom. Real war. A sudden movement in a ruined building. Funk's voice snapped. "On me! Cover left!" His Thompson raised, eyes scanning, muscles coiled. A German soldier peeked from the rubble. Funk's men fired. The enemy dropped silently into the snow. Funk didn't pause. He moved from house to house, clearing each with precision. Smoke from small fires curled through broken roofs. Windows shattered. The chaos was controlled, methodical. Each action was a heartbeat closer to securing the village. And then the unexpected. Another German patrol emerged from the woods, 10 strong, wearing white camo over winter uniforms. Funk assessed in an instant, outnumbered again, but the element of surprise was his ally. A low whistle to his men, and a coordinated flanking move turned the hunters into the hunted. Within minutes, the patrol was neutralized, prisoners secured, and Funk's company held the streets. By the time reinforcements arrived, Holtzheim was fully under Allied control. Funk's men were blooded, exhausted, but alive. The village, once a battlefield, was now silent under the snow. Leonard Funk, standing in the middle of the street, looked at the horizon. Smoke, fire, and destruction surrounded him, but he was already thinking ahead. Next mission, next challenge. Fear had no place here, only action, only leadership, only survival. This was war stripped to its rawest form, and Funk, he thrived in it.
Funk rounded the corner of the farmhouse and froze. 90 Germans, armed and ready, were staring at him. 4 of his men, who had been guarding the prisoners, were on their knees, helpless. The prisoners they'd captured only 20 minutes ago were now free, weapons in hand, and preparing to strike Company C from the rear. The German officer, face red with rage, shoved his MP-40 into Funk's stomach, screaming in German. Funk didn't understand a word. The rational choice? Surrender. Every instinct screamed to comply. But Funk remembered Malmedy, where 84 Americans were slaughtered after surrendering. He remembered his men, scattered and exposed. Instead of fear, a wild, uncontrollable laugh escaped him. The officer froze, bewildered. Funk's laughter grew louder, shaking his shoulders, impossible to stop. For a few surreal seconds, the Germans were off balance. Funk used that chaos. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for his Thompson submachine gun, unslung it, and in a single fluid motion, opened fire. Bullets tore through the snow. The German officer fell instantly. Funk didn't stop. His 4 guards grabbed rifles from the fallen Germans. Chaos erupted. Within 60 seconds, 21 Germans were dead, more than 40 surrendered, and the rest were wounded. Funk had turned the impossible odds into victory, his quick thinking and fearless audacity saving his men and the day. The village of Holtzheim was in Allied hands. Funk, bloodied but unbowed, stood in the snow amid smoke, destruction, and bodies. He had done what no one could: survive against impossible odds, protect his men, and rewrite the rules of war. The laughter that saved lives would become legend, the moment that earned him the Medal of Honor. War doesn't reward the strong or the reckless. It rewards those who think, adapt, and act, even when the math says it's impossible. Leonard Funk was that soldier.
The Battle of Holtzheim ended. Smoke rose from the destroyed village, rifles still smoldering in the snow. Funk, bloodied, exhausted, and standing amid the carnage, realized the impossible had been done. 90 Germans had been in his way. 21 lay dead. The rest surrendered. His men were alive. Company C was intact. In a single act, laughter,
courage, and lightning-fast decision-making had changed everything. Funk returned to the regiment, the story spreading like wildfire. Fellow soldiers marveled at the paratrooper who laughed at death, laughed at impossible odds, and turned certain defeat into victory. His actions at Holtheim would earn him the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States, on September 5, 1945, from President Harry Truman himself. Truman famously said, "I would rather have this medal than be President of the United States." Leonard Funk's courage wasn't loud or boastful. After the war, he returned to Pennsylvania, resuming the quiet life of a clerk at the Veterans Administration, helping other veterans navigate the bureaucracy, ensuring their sacrifices were honored. He never capitalized on his fame. His medals, Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Hearts, and foreign decorations, rested quietly in cases. He married Gertrude, raised 2 daughters, and lived a life of service and humility. Funk died November 20, 1992, at 76. Buried in Arlington National Cemetery, he joined the ranks of history's true heroes, brave, selfless, and unassuming. The story of Leonard Funk teaches that war doesn't reward size, strength, or fearlessness alone. It favors those who think, adapt, and act when the odds are impossible. The small paratrooper from Pennsylvania, standing in snow, laughing at death, had done what few could imagine. His courage saved lives, changed the course of a moment in history, and left a legacy that will endure forever.